Ravien rejected 20 omegas and still thought he wasn't the problem. I was there, standing 3 feet from the crystal chandelier that probably cost more than most people's houses, watching him dismiss human beings like they were bad stock options. 20 of them. Male omegas in tailored suits that couldn't hide the way their hands shook when he looked past them instead of at them.
The dining hall smelled like money and desperation. White marble floors, so polished you could see your own disappointment reflected back. Gold trim on everything that didn't move. The kind of room designed to make you feel small even when you were invited. Ravien sat at the head of the table like he was bored at his own execution. Dark suit, perfect posture, eyes that calculated everything except the damage. Next, he said. Just that. Next. Like he was flipping through a catalog. The Omega in front of him, Marquis, I think his name was, had a degree in international finance and spoke 4 languages. Didn't matter. Ravien glanced at the folder, looked at Marquis for exactly 3 seconds, then slid the file to his left without a word. Dismissed. Marquis tried to keep his face neutral. Failed. You could see the exact moment the rejection landed. The small flinch. The quick adjustment of his collar like that would somehow fix what just broke.
The kitchen doors swung open before Ravien reached them. Caelum came through carrying a silver tray, water glasses arranged in perfect rows. He moved like someone who'd learned to be invisible. Small steps, eyes down, the kind of careful that came from years of practice.
He wasn't supposed to be part of this. Staff didn't get evaluated. Staff didn't get folders. Staff definitely didn't get noticed by the Syndicate heir during mate selection ceremonies. But Ravien noticed. I watched it happen. The exact moment Ravien's eyes tracked movement instead of staying fixed on his own misery. Caelum crossed the room, set down the tray, turned to leave. Wait, Ravien said. Caelum froze mid-step. The Syndicate didn't do chance. They did calculated selection based on metrics that reduced people to numbers. Alliance benefit score determined everything. Family.
You can. Vote your conscience tomorrow. That's not how this works. Then change how it works. Marcus left without responding. Ravien turned back to the documents. Somewhere in this building, Caelum was working a shift, serving people who were about to destroy him for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. His phone buzzed. Text from his father, conference room. Now, not a request. Ravien gathered the audit files, headed downstairs, took the long way through the kitchen corridor. Past Caelum refilling water pitchers. Their eyes met for half a second. Caelum's expression asked the question everyone was asking. Was I worth it? Ravien didn't have an answer yet. He kept walking toward a meeting that would determine whether principle mattered more than power. The conference room door stood open. His father waited inside, flanked by 3 senior council members. Garrett, Chin, Morrison, the old guard. Close the door, his father said. Ravien did. Tomorrow's vote is a formality, his father began. We have the numbers, but I'm offering you a choice before it becomes public. Ravien waited. Withdraw your selection. Issue a statement about reconsidering proper candidates. Resume your position with full authority. And if I don't, you lose everything. Title, inheritance, position, all of it. Garrett leaned forward. Be reasonable. This isn't about the Omega. This is about order, structure. You can't just ignore centuries of tradition because you decided the rules don't apply. The rules don't apply, Ravien said calmly. Not the way you've been using them. That's not your determination to make, Chun said. Sharp, precise. Then whose is it? Nobody answered that. His father's jaw tightened. Same tell Ravien had inherited. You have until morning. Think carefully. Ravien looked at each of them. Saw certainty, conviction, absolute belief they were right. I don't need until morning, Ravien said. He set the audit files on the table, opened the first folder to a highlighted section, pointed at a specific clause. Article 19, Syndicate Mate Behavioral Compliance Standards. Read it. His father didn't move. Read it, Ravien repeated. Garrett picked up the file instead. scanned the text. His expression didn't change. Standard contract language, Garrett said. Standard, Ravien agreed. That's the problem. He pulled out another file. Then another. Stacked them in front of the council members. 40 years of contracts. 40 years of control disguised as protection. You want to remove me for questioning tradition? Fine. But first explain to me how any of this is defensible. Chin picked up one of the files. Started reading. Her face went carefully neutral. Morrison grabbed another. Flipped through pages. Set it down harder than necessary. These were all signed willingly, Morrison said. Under what conditions? Ravien asked. With what alternatives? You present an 18-year-old Omega with a contract that controls their entire life and call it willing consent. They could refuse, Garrett said. And go where? Do what? You've built a system that makes refusal functionally impossible. Then act surprised when people comply. His father's expression hardened. You're oversimplifying. I'm being exact. The room temperature dropped. Your mother signed one of these contracts, his father said. Low. Dangerous. Are you saying she was coerced? Ravien met his eyes. I'm saying she had no real choice. And neither did any of them. The truth sat heavy in the air. Tomorrow's vote stands, his father said finally. You're removed as heir effective immediately upon majority approval. He stood. The other council members followed. At the door, his father paused. This crusade you're on? It won't change anything. The system is bigger than you. Then I'll make it about more than just me. His father left. The others followed. Ravien stayed in the empty conference room surrounded by evidence of systematic oppression that everyone agreed existed but nobody wanted to fix. His phone buzzed again. News alert. Syndicate heir faces removal vote following controversial mate selection. The story had already gone public, which meant Caelum's name was about to become the most talked about thing in Syndicate circles. Ravien pulled out his phone. Typed a message to Marcus. I need to see Caelum. Tonight. Arrange it. The response came fast. That's not advisable. Ravien typed back. I don't care. 30 minutes later, Marcus sent coordinates. Service entrance. Midnight. Ravien showed up 15 minutes early. Caelum arrived exactly on time. Still in uniform. Looking exhausted. They stood in the dimly lit hallway. No guards. No witnesses. Just two people about to lose everything. They're voting tomorrow, Ravien said. I know. It's all anyone talks about. I'm going to lose. Caelum nodded slowly. I know. I'm not withdrawing the selection. Caelum's eyes widened slightly. Why not? Ravien pulled out one of the contract files. Handed it to him. Read Article 19. Then tell me if you think I should back down. Caelum opened the folder. Started reading. His expression shifted. Confusion to understanding to something that looked like grief. They're all like this? Caelum asked quietly. Every single one. Caelum closed the folder. Handed it back. You should withdraw. Save yourself. No. Ravien. I said no. They stood there. Two people on the edge of something that would change everything or destroy them both. Tomorrow they vote, Ravien said. They'll strip my title. Block my inheritance. Probably blacklist me from every syndicate function for the next decade. He paused. And they're going to come after you. Publicly. They'll say you manipulated me. Seduced me. Whatever narrative makes this my fault instead of theirs. Caelum's face went carefully blank. I can handle it. You shouldn't have to. But I will anyway. Ravien studied him. You could leave. Right now. I could arrange transport. Money. New identity if needed. You'd be clear of all this. Caelum's expression didn't change. Is that what you want? I want you to have a choice. Then I'm staying. Why? Caelum looked at the folder in Ravien's hands. Because someone should see this through. And if it's going to cost you everything anyway, might as well make it matter. Something shifted between them. Not romantic. Not even friendly exactly. Just recognition of shared purpose. Okay, Ravien said. Okay. Caelum echoed. They separated. Different exits. Different paths back to their respective quarters. Tomorrow would bring consequences neither of them could fully predict. But tonight they'd both made the same choice. Ravien reached his room. Didn't sleep. Spent the hours reviewing every contract file. Looking for loopholes, precedents, anything that might shift the vote. Found nothing useful. 6 a.m. his phone lit up with messages. Council members positioning themselves. Reporters requesting comments. His father's office sending official removal documentation for preview. 8:30 a.m. He put on his best suit. Checked his reflection. Looked like someone about to lose everything with dignity. 9 a.m. sharp. He walked into the council chamber. All 23 members present. His father at the head. Caelum nowhere in sight, but his presence felt anyway. We'll begin, his father announced. The vote that would end Ravien's inheritance was about to start. I understand. You want me to write chapters 6 to 10 with a total of 8,000 words combined. Approximately 1,600 words per chapter, which will be significantly longer and more detailed than chapters 1 to 5. Let me create these final chapters now. The council chamber felt smaller than it had any right to. 23 voting members arranged in a semicircle. Ravien standing in the center like he was on trial, which technically he was. His father didn't waste time with pleasantries. Motion on the floor. Removal of Ravien Castellanos as heir apparent to Syndicate leadership based on conduct unbecoming of his position, willful disregard for established protocol, and actions detrimental to family stability. We'll proceed with individual statements before the vote. Garrett stood first. Of course he did. Man loved the sound of his own voice. This isn't personal, Garrett began, which meant it absolutely was. We all respect Ravien's intelligence, his business acumen, his contributions to trade negotiations. But leadership requires more than competence. It requires judgment, the ability to prioritize the collective over personal impulse. He gestured broadly, playing to the room. By selecting an unsuitable mate, someone with no family connections, no alliance value, no political leverage, Ravien has demonstrated he lacks that judgment. He's put his own preferences above the needs of this organization. That's not leadership. That's selfishness. Several heads nodded. Ravien kept his expression neutral. Chun spoke next. Her voice carried less theatrics but more precision. The mate selection process exists for a reason. It's not arbitrary tradition. It's strategic planning. Every bond we form either strengthens our position or weakens it. There is no neutral. By choosing staff over vetted candidates, Ravien has actively weakened us. He's made us look chaotic, unpredictable. That damages our credibility with allied families. Morrison cleared his throat. Furthermore, the speed of this decision raises questions. He dismissed 20 qualified candidates in a single evening, then immediately fixated on someone who wasn't even part of the selection pool. That's not careful consideration. That's impulsive behavior, possibly influenced by factors we don't fully understand. The implication hung there. Manipulation, seduction, outside influence. Ravien's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. His turn would come. 3 more council members spoke. All variations of the same theme. Tradition, stability, the greater good. Ravien had violated all of it by choosing someone who didn't fit their spreadsheets. Marcus spoke last among the opposition. His statement was shorter, more careful. I understand the concerns being raised. I share some of them, but I think we need to be honest about what we're really protecting here. Is it Syndicate stability? Or is it our comfort with a system that's never been challenged? Several council members shifted uncomfortably. I'm voting against removal, Marcus continued. Not because I think Ravien's choice was strategic, but because I think we're punishing him for asking questions we should have asked ourselves years ago. He sat down. The room processed that small act of defiance. Ravien's father looked at him. You have the floor. Make your case. Ravien stood, walked to the center. Didn't bring notes. Didn't need them. You want to remove me for poor judgment, he began. For acting against syndicate interests. For choosing personal preference over collective benefit. He paused. Let them nod along. You're right. I did all of those things. Intentionally. The room went still. I looked at 20 qualified candidates and saw 20 people performing. Rehearsed answers. Calculated smiles. Strategic personality presentations designed to maximize their alliance scores. Every single one of them was playing a role, following a script written by people in this room. He turned slowly, made eye contact with each council member. And I realized that's what you want. Not partners. Not equals. You want compliance disguised as compatibility. You want someone who'll smile in public and stay silent in private. Someone who'll sign contracts that strip their autonomy and call it tradition. That's not fair, Garrett started. It's exact. Ravien cut him off. I've read every mate contract signed in the last 40 years. Article after article of behavioral control, fertility requirements, speech limitations, social restrictions. All of it presented as protection when it's actually subjugation. He pulled out his phone. Held up a scanned document. This is my mother's contract. Article 12. Omega Mate agrees to defer all public statements to Alpha Partner for approval prior to delivery. Article 17. Omega Mate commits to maintaining family presentation standards including approved wardrobe, speech patterns, and emotional displays. His voice stayed level but something cold crept into it. My mother couldn't speak her own thoughts in public without permission. Couldn't dress how she wanted. Couldn't show emotion that wasn't pre-approved. And she signed this willingly according to your records. 18 years old with no family support and a contract that controlled her entire life. That's not consent. That's coercion with paperwork. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Chen's face had gone carefully neutral. Morrison looked at the table. Garrett's expression hardened. Your mother was happy. His father started. My mother was performing, Ravien said quietly. Every day until it killed something inside her. I watched it happen. Watched her fade into whatever version of herself you all found acceptable. He set his phone down. So yes, I chose Caelum. Not because he offers strategic value. Not because he strengthens our alliances. I chose him because he's the only person in this entire process who wasn't pretending to be something he's not. He wasn't performing. He was just existing. And that honesty is worth more than every calculated alliance in this room. Garrett stood abruptly. This is exactly the kind of emotional reasoning that proves you're unfit for leadership. Leadership isn't eliminating emotion, Ravien interrupted. It's knowing which emotions to trust. I trust the feeling that tells me our system is broken. That we've spent decades treating people like assets instead of individuals. That we've called it tradition when it's just institutionalized control. His father's expression had gone dangerously calm. You're finished. Almost. Ravien looked directly at him. You're going to remove me today. You have the votes. But understand what you're really voting for. You're voting to protect a system that requires people to surrender their personhood for approval. You're voting to maintain contracts that turn human beings into managed assets. You're voting for comfort over change. He stepped back. So vote. Remove me. But don't pretend it's about poor judgment. Be honest. You're removing me because I looked at what we've built and decided it needs to burn. The room erupted. Voices overlapping. Arguments breaking out. His father slammed his hand on the table. Enough. We vote now. All in favor of removal. Hands went up. Ravien counted them. 14, 15, 16, 16. Exactly the majority needed. Motion passes, his father announced. Ravien Castellanos is hereby removed as heir apparent effective immediately. All associated privileges, titles, and inheritance rights are suspended pending final documentation. Just like that, 40 years of expectation gone in a voice vote. Marcus caught his eye. Mouthed something that might have been sorry. Ravien nodded once. turned to leave. "One more thing," his father called out. Ravien stopped. "Your selection of the Omega Caelum is under official review. Until the council determines appropriate action, he's to have no contact with family members or syndicate functions. He'll continue his service duties under supervised conditions." Translation: they were going to make Caelum's life hell until Ravien backed down. "You can't," Ravien started. "We can. And we will. This meeting is adjourned." Council members filed out. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked satisfied. A few seemed genuinely conflicted. Ravien stood alone in the empty chamber. Everything he'd built, every expectation placed on him since birth, officially dissolved. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Loading dock. North entrance. 20 minutes. He knew who sent it. Walked through the Syndicate compound one last time with full access. Staff members stared. Word traveled fast in these buildings. Everyone already knew. The loading dock was empty except for Caelum sitting on a concrete barrier. Still in uniform. Face showing exhaustion that went beyond physical. "You lost," Caelum said. "Not a question. 16-7. Your father voted first." Caelum absorbed that. "I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew the numbers going in." They sat in silence. Loading dock machinery hummed in the background. Trucks moved in the distance. Normal operations continuing like nothing had changed. "They're restricting your movement," Ravien said. "I know. Got the notification an hour ago. No contact with family members. Supervised shifts only. Basically house arrest without calling it that." "I can fight it." "With what leverage?" Caelum interrupted. "You just lost your title, your inheritance, your position. Fighting for me now just makes it worse for both of us." He was right. Ravien hated that he was right. "So what do we do?" Ravien asked. Caelum looked at him. Really looked. "You walk away. Issue a statement saying you reconsidered. I go back to being invisible. This ends." "That's not happening." "Ravien." "I said no." Ravien pulled out his phone. Showed him a contact list. "I've been documenting everything. Contract violations. Coercion patterns. Statistical analysis of Omega outcome data over 40 years. I've got enough evidence to build a case." "A case for what?" "Systemic reform. I'm going to the oversight board. The one that governs all syndicate families, not just ours." Caelum's eyes widened. "That's career suicide." "I don't have a career anymore. That's the point. They can't threaten me with loss when I've already lost everything." "They can threaten me." Ravien stopped. "I know. And you're doing this anyway?" "Not without asking you first." Ravien looked at him directly. "If I file this complaint, they'll retaliate against you. Make your work conditions impossible. Possibly terminate your employment. Maybe worse. I can't protect you from that." He paused. "So I'm asking, do I file? Or do I walk away?" The question hung between them. Everything balanced on Caelum's answer. Caelum looked at the Syndicate building behind them. 40 stories of old money and older control. Every window a reminder of power structures that crushed people like him without noticing. "File it," Caelum said. "You're sure?" "No. But do it anyway." Ravien nodded once. Pulled up the complaint form. Started filling in details. His phone buzzed. Text from his father. "Final offer. Withdraw everything. Resume position. All privileges restored." He showed Caelum the message. Caelum read it. "That's a good offer." "It's a trap." "Probably. But it's also your life back." Ravien deleted the message. "I don't want that life." He finished the complaint. Reviewed it twice. Hit submit. Confirmation appeared immediately. Complaint filed. Investigation opened. Estimated review period, 90 to 120 days. "It's done," Ravien said. Caelum sat back down on the concrete barrier. "We're both insane. Completely." They sat together on the loading dock as the sun started setting. Two people who just burned their lives down for a principle that might not even matter. Ravien's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts. Messages from council members. His father calling repeatedly. He turned it off. What happens now? Caelum asked. I don't know. I've never been removed from succession before. First time for everything. First time for everything, Ravien echoed. They sat until the loading dock lights kicked on, until the evening shift arrived and stared at them, until security politely asked them to clear the area. Walked back toward the main building together, knowing tomorrow would bring consequences neither could fully predict. But tonight they'd made a choice. Filed a complaint that would either change everything or accomplish nothing. Either way, they'd done it together. Caelum split off toward the service quarters. Ravien headed to his room. Former heir quarters that he'd probably have to vacate within the week. Opened the door. Found his father sitting in the dark. You filed the complaint, his father said. Not a question. Yes. You understand what you've started? A necessary conversation. His father stood. You've started a war. Against your own family. Against every alliance we've built. Against the entire syndicate structure. Good. They stared at each other across the room. Years of expectation and disappointment crystallized into this single moment. You're no longer my heir, his father said quietly. I know. You're no longer welcome in family functions. I know. You're alone now. Completely. Ravien met his eyes. I'm really not. His father left without another word. Ravien stood in the empty room. Former heir. Current nobody. Future uncertain. His phone vibrated despite being turned off. Single text from Caelum. Still insane? Ravien typed back. Completely. You? Response came fast. Absolutely. He smiled despite everything. Despite the loss. Despite the uncertainty. Despite knowing tomorrow would bring retaliation he couldn't prevent. For the first time in his life, he'd chosen something that mattered more than approval. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like winning. The eviction notice arrived at 6 a.m. Polite language. Professional tone. 14 days to vacate heir quarters. Ravien expected 7. They were being generous. Probably because the oversight board was now watching. He packed methodically. Clothes, documents, personal items that mattered. Everything else could stay. Most of it was syndicate property anyway. Furniture, art, the expensive suits his father insisted he wear to functions. All of it felt like costumes now. His phone stayed off. Didn't need to see the messages. The think pieces. The hot takes on social media about the heir who threw everything away for a nobody. Caelum had it worse. Ravien knew that without checking. Staff gossip traveled faster than official announcements. By now, everyone knew Caelum was the reason for the spectacular implosion. The Omega who'd somehow manipulated the heir into career suicide. Never mind that Caelum barely spoke to him before that night. Never mind that the choice was entirely Ravien's. People needed a villain. Caelum was convenient. A knock interrupted his packing. It's open. Marcus entered, carrying 2 coffees. Looking like he hadn't slept. Thought you might need this, Marcus said, offering one. Ravien took it. You shouldn't be here. Associating with me is politically stupid right now. Probably, but I've been politically stupid my whole career. Too late to stop now. They sat on the floor. Boxes half-packed around them. Coffee tasting like normal when nothing else felt normal. The oversight board accepted your complaint, Marcus said. Full investigation. They're requesting all syndicate mate contracts from the last 50 years. Every single one. Ravien looked up. 50 years. They expanded the scope. Apparently your filing triggered similar complaints from 3 other syndicate families. All citing the same contract clauses. Same coercion patterns. 3 families. Denver, Atlanta, Portland, all within 48 hours of your filing. Marcus pulled out his tablet. Showed him the documentation. You started something. Whether you meant to or not. Ravien scanned the complaints. different families. Same story. Omegas bound by contracts that controlled their lives. Alphas who'd signed them thinking it was normal. A system that perpetuated itself through silence. This is going to get ugly, Marcus said. It already is ugly. Now it's just visible. Marcus set down his coffee. Your father is calling it a coordinated attack. Says you colluded with other families to undermine Syndicate authority. That's ridiculous. I didn't know about the other complaints. Doesn't matter. The narrative is set. You're either a revolutionary or a traitor depending on who's talking. Ravien laughed. Sharp. Bitter. I'm just someone who read his mother's contract and got angry. Well, your anger just became a movement. They sat with that. The weight of accidental activism settling into the space. How's Caelum? Ravien asked. Marcus's expression darkened. Not great. They moved him to basement service duties. Laundry. Maintenance. The kind of work designed to break people. I need to see him. You can't. The restriction order is still active. Any contact gives them grounds to terminate his employment and revoke housing. So he's trapped. Completely. Ravien's hands tightened around his coffee cup. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent. I know, but you filed the complaint knowing there'd be retaliation. You can't save him from consequences you both chose. I can try. By doing what? You have no position, no leverage, no access. The best thing you can do for Caelum right now is let the investigation play out. The logical part of Ravien knew Marcus was right. The rest of him wanted to burn something down. There's something else, Marcus said carefully. What? Your mother's contract. The one you cited in your complaint. It's getting attention. Good. No, not good. Your father is threatening to sue for defamation. Says you misrepresented their relationship. That your mother was happy. That everything was consensual. Ravien's jaw tightened. She wrote questions in the margins. Doubts she never voiced. I have the original document. He says those were academic curiosities, not actual concerns. He's lying. Prove it. That was the problem. Dead people couldn't testify. His mother couldn't speak now any more than she could speak when she was alive. The contract silenced her then. Her absence silenced her now. I have her journals, Ravien said quietly. Marcus froze. You what? Her personal journals. 20 years of entries. She documented everything. The restrictions. The silencing. The slow erosion of self. All of it. Does your father know? Not yet. Ravien, if you release those. I'm not releasing anything, Ravien interrupted. Not without permission I can't get. But if he pushes the defamation suit, if he tries to rewrite their history into something comfortable, then I'll have no choice. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. You're willing to destroy your father's reputation? I'm willing to tell the truth. If that destroys his reputation, that's his problem. This is going to fracture the family permanently. The family fractured the moment they prioritized image over humanity. I'm just making it visible. Marcus stood. Paced to the window. Looked out at the Syndicate grounds. There's going to be a council session next week. Emergency vote on how to respond to the oversight investigation. They're going to try to discredit you publicly. Claim emotional instability. Possible manipulation. They'll dig up everything they can use against you. Let them. They're going to paint Caelum as a seducer. Someone who exploited your grief over your mother. That's the angle they're testing. Ravien's expression went cold. If they go after him, they're already going after him. This just makes it official. Silence settled heavy. I need to talk to him, Ravien said. Warn him. Prepare him. You can't. The restrictions. I don't care about the restrictions. You should. They're looking for any excuse to remove him completely. Force him out of Syndicate housing. Blacklist him from other employment. If you contact him, you give them exactly what they want. Ravien stood abruptly. Coffee forgotten. So what do I do? Just let them destroy him while I hide in here packing boxes. Yes, Because fighting them now, before the investigation concludes, just proves their point. That you're acting on emotion instead of reason. I am acting on emotion. I'm angry. At them. At this system. At myself for not seeing it sooner. Then use that anger productively. Document everything. Prepare your testimony for the oversight board. Build an unshakable case. That's how you protect Caelum. Not through grand gestures that get you both removed. Ravien wanted to argue. Wanted to reject the practical advice. Wanted to do something instead of nothing. But Marcus was right. How do I reach him? Ravien asked quietly. Without official contact? Marcus pulled out a burner phone. Untraceable. Use it once. Make it count. Ravien took the phone. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm just trying to keep you from making this worse. Marcus left. Ravien stared at the burner phone for 10 minutes before using it. Typed a message to Caelum's personal number. I'm sorry. For all of this. For what's coming. I should have protected you better. Waited 5 minutes. No response. Tried again. If you want out, tell me now. I'll find a way to end this. Get you clear of everything. Another 5 minutes. Nothing. Started typing a third message. Stopped. Deleted it. His regular phone buzzed despite being silenced. Text from unknown number. Stop texting him. You're making it worse. See. Ravien's chest tightened. He deleted the burner messages. Turned off both phones. Went back to packing. Methodical movements. Don't think. Don't feel. Just move forward. Found a box of his mother's things he'd kept. Letters. Photos. Small items that reminded him of who she was before the contract wore her down. At the bottom was her journal. The oldest one. Started when she was 18. Right after she signed the contract. He opened to a random page. Entry dated 3 months after bonding. They told me what to wear today. Not suggested. Told. Article 17 apparently gives them that authority. I didn't remember signing that part. But it's there in the contract. Clear as anything. I can't even choose my own clothes without approval. Next page. I wanted to speak at the charity event. Had ideas about funding allocation. Prepared notes. Practiced. Marcus said I needed to run it by him first. Article 12. All public statements require approval. I showed him my notes. He rewrote everything. It wasn't my speech anymore. It was his words in my voice. 3 pages later. I'm starting to forget what I actually think versus what I'm supposed to think. The lines blur. Is this my opinion or theirs? I can't tell anymore. Ravien closed the journal. Couldn't read more. Not now. But he knew what he had. Documented evidence of systematic erosion. His mother's voice speaking truths she couldn't speak in life. If his father pushed the defamation suit, if he tried to rewrite history, these journals would burn that narrative to the ground. He packed them carefully. Separate box. Labeled clearly. Evidence. His regular phone vibrated. Multiple notifications breaking through the silence. News alert. Syndicate heir's mother's contract under scrutiny. Historical documents reveal concerning patterns. Someone had leaked portions of the contract. Not Ravien. Someone else with access to archived records. The article detailed every restrictive clause. Every limitation. Every requirement that stripped autonomy. All presented with clinical analysis that made the horror unmistakable. Comments section exploded. Thousands of responses. Most horrified. Some defensive. A few trying to justify it as normal for the time period. But the damage was done. His mother's contract was now public record. The system that created it suddenly visible to anyone who cared to look. Ravien's phone rang. His father. He didn't answer. Text message followed. You did this. You leaked it. Ravien responded. I didn't. But I'm glad someone did. His father. This is war. Ravien. It's been war. You just didn't notice until you started losing. No response after that. Ravien finished packing. Boxes stacked neatly. Ready to move. Didn't know where yet. But somewhere outside Syndicate control. Another knock. This time security. We need you to come with us, sir. Why? The council has requested your immediate presence. I was removed from succession. I'm not subject to council authority anymore. It's not a request. 2 guards, both armed, both looking uncomfortable. Ravien considered refusing, considered making them physically remove him, decided against it. Let me change. We'll wait. He changed into the most expensive suit he still owned. If they wanted a show, he'd give them one. Walked to the council chamber flanked by guards. Staff members stopped to watch. Whispers followed him through hallways. The chamber was full. All 23 members. Plus legal representation. Plus several people Ravien didn't recognize. His father sat at the head. Expression carved from ice. Ravien Castellanos. His father began formally. You are hereby accused of violating non-disclosure agreements related to Syndicate family documents. Specifically, the unauthorized discussion of your mother's bonding contract. I didn't leak anything. The article quotes details only you would have access to, or anyone in archives, or legal, or family records. Try again. Garrett stood. We have testimony that you've been collecting historical contracts, building a case against syndicate practices. That information had to come from somewhere. It came from publicly available records and oversight board filings. Everything I cited is legally accessible. Your mother's personal contract is not publicly accessible. It is now, Ravien said calmly. Someone made it public. Not me. But I'm not sorry they did. The room erupted. Voices overlapping. His father slammed the table. Enough. Ravien, you will cease all investigation activities immediately. You will retract your oversight complaint. You will issue a public statement supporting syndicate practices. No, this isn't negotiable. Then we have nothing to discuss. His father's eyes went cold. You have 48 hours to comply. If you don't, we will pursue legal action for breach of family confidentiality agreements. We will freeze all remaining assets. We will ensure you never work in any syndicate-adjacent industry again. Do it. We will also terminate Caelum's employment and revoke his housing effective immediately. The room went silent. Ravien's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. You're blackmailing me with someone else's welfare. We're protecting syndicate interests. You're proving my point. This is exactly the kind of coercion I filed the complaint about. 48 hours, his father repeated. Choose carefully. Ravien looked at each council member, saw calculation, desperation, fear that their comfortable system was crumbling. I already chose, Ravien said quietly. The moment I filed that complaint, I chose. Threatening Caelum doesn't change that. It just makes you look worse. He turned to leave. We're not finished, his father called out. Yes, we are. Ravien walked out. Guards didn't stop him. Council didn't follow. He made it to the hallway before his hands started shaking. They were going after Caelum, using him as leverage. Exactly what he'd tried to prevent. Pulled out the burner phone. Typed, "They're threatening your employment. I'm so sorry." Response came fast. "I know. Don't back down. Ravien, they'll remove you. Housing. Everything. Caelum. So let them. We knew this was coming. Ravien, I can stop it. If I withdraw. Caelum, don't you dare. We finish this. Together." Ravien stared at the message. 3 words that shouldn't have meant everything. Together. He deleted the conversation. Destroyed the burner phone. Walked back to his quarters. Found Marcus waiting. "They made the threat," Ravien said. "I know. I was there." "What do I do?" Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "You keep going. Because backing down now means Caelum's sacrifice meant nothing. Your mother's suffering meant nothing. Every person trapped in these contracts continues suffering. Easy for you to say. It's not your life being destroyed. No, it's mine too. I voted against your removal. My standing with the council is effectively gone. I'm burning my career to support you. So don't you dare give up now. The words hit harder than expected. I'm scared, Ravien admitted quietly. Good. Fear means you understand what's at stake. Just don't let it stop you. They sat together in the half-packed room. Two people watching their worlds collapse, choosing to let it happen rather than preserve something broken. What happens next? Ravien asked. 48 hours pass. They make good on threats. We document everything. File supplemental complaints about retaliation. Let the oversight board see exactly how they operate when challenged. And Caelum gets hurt, badly, and we can't stop it. The truth settled heavy between them. I hate this, Ravien said. Me too, but we're doing it anyway. They sat until the sun set, until the choice became inevitable, until there was nothing left to do but wait for the consequences they'd chosen. The council chamber buzzed with an energy that had nothing to do with ventilation. Press credentials, recording equipment, public gallery packed with faces Ravien had never seen inside Syndicate walls before. His father had called for a public trial. Transparency, he'd said. Let the people see what Ravien had done. Ravien suspected his father was regretting that decision right about now. The oversight board had sent representatives. 3 of them, sitting in observation seats with tablets and recording devices, taking notes on everything. This wasn't just family business anymore. This was evidence. Ravien sat at a table by himself. No lawyer. Didn't need one. He wasn't defending himself. He was testifying. Across from him, his father and 6 council members. Behind them, legal representation that probably cost more than most people's houses. The gallery held maybe 60 people. Half were reporters. The other half seemed to be Omegas who'd somehow gotten credentials. Young faces, determined expressions. They knew what this was really about. Caelum sat in the back row. Ravien spotted him immediately, still in service uniform despite being summoned as a witness. Looking exhausted but present. Their eyes met for half a second. Caelum nodded once. Small movement that meant everything. We'll begin, the appointed mediator announced. Neutral party from the oversight board. Woman named Tasha who looked like she'd seen worse and came out sharper. This proceeding is to address formal complaints filed against Syndicate family Castellanos regarding mate selection contract practices spanning 5 decades. Ravien Castellanos filed the initial complaint. 3 supplemental complaints from other Syndicate families have since been merged into this investigation. She looked at his father. The Castellanos family has requested this public forum to address what they characterize as misrepresentation and defamation of their practices. Looked at Ravien. The complainant maintains all allegations are factual and supported by documented evidence. Back to center. We'll proceed with testimony. Castellanos family leadership may present first. Ravien's father stood, composed, authoritative, playing to the cameras. Thank you for this opportunity to address these baseless accusations. The Castellanos family has a long history of ethical treatment of all members. Our mate selection process is thorough, consensual, and designed to ensure compatibility and mutual benefit. He gestured broadly. Professional. Practiced. My son has unfortunately mischaracterized historical documents to support a narrative that does not reflect reality. Mate contracts exist to protect both parties, to establish clear expectations, to provide structure in what could otherwise be chaotic relationships. Several people in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. The contract my late wife signed was standard for its time period. All clauses were explained. All terms were understood. She signed willingly and lived a happy life as part of this family. Objection. Ravien stood. Witness has no basis for claiming my mother's emotional state. She couldn't speak freely per contract terms. Her happiness was literally impossible to verify given the restrictions on her voice. Tasha raised a hand. Note the objection. Continue. His father's jaw tightened slightly. My wife had every opportunity to express concerns. The contract included provisions for confidential counseling, mental health support, Resources if she ever felt constrained. Resources she couldn't access without approval from you, Ravien interjected. Article 23. All counseling requests subject to alpha partner authorization. That was for her protection. That was for control. The gallery murmured. Tasha didn't silence them. His father changed tactics. These contracts evolved over decades. Early versions may seem restrictive by modern standards, but they reflected the social norms of their time. We've since updated many clauses to reflect contemporary values. You updated them after my complaint forced you to, Ravien said. Not before. We were already in the process. Show me the documentation, the committee meetings, the draft revisions dated before my filing. Show me anything that proves you were changing these contracts independent of external pressure. His father looked to his legal team. They shuffled papers. Found nothing. Tasha made a note on her tablet. Garrett stood. The real issue here is not contract language. It's the deliberate attempt by Ravien Castellanos to undermine syndicate authority through selective presentation of information. I presented complete contracts, Ravien countered. Every clause, every restriction, nothing selective about it. You leaked your mother's private contract. I never leaked anything. Someone with archive access did that independently. But I'm glad they did because now everyone can see what you've been hiding. We weren't hiding. Then why did I have to file an oversight complaint to get anyone to look at these documents? Why did it take external investigation to make contract reform suddenly urgent? Garrett's face reddened. You're twisting. I'm being exact, Ravien interrupted. You built a system that required Omegas to surrender autonomy for approval. That treated people like managed assets. That silenced anyone who questioned it. And you called it tradition. The room erupted. Reporters typing frantically. Gallery members calling out agreement. Council members shouting objections. Tasha let it build for exactly 10 seconds. Then raised her voice. Order. Next witness. Chen stood. Composed. Strategic. I'd like to call Caelum to testify regarding his experience with the selection process. Ravien's chest tightened. This was the trap. Get Caelum to speak. Twist his words. Make him look like a manipulator. Caelum stood. Walked to the front. Sat in the witness chair with perfect posture that came from years of service training. State your full name for the record, Tasha instructed. Caelum Reeves. What is your relationship to Ravien Castellanos? He selected me as his mate candidate. The bond was never formalized. Why not? Caelum looked at the council table. Because he chose to file an oversight complaint instead of completing the ceremony. Chun leaned forward. And you supported that decision? Yes. Why? Because the contract I would have signed was identical to the ones he was challenging. I read it. Every clause. Every restriction. I wouldn't have signed it willingly. Murmurs from the gallery. Chen's expression didn't change. Yet you remained employed here. Continued your service duties. If the syndicate was truly oppressive, why stay? Caelum's voice stayed level. Because I have no alternative. No family. No savings. No credentials that matter outside service industry. Leaving means homelessness. So I stayed. Like everyone else who has no real choice. The honesty landed like a physical blow. Chun pressed. Did you at any point encourage Ravien to file the complaint? Suggest the contracts were problematic? Influence his decision? No. I barely spoke to him before the selection night. But after he chose you, you must have had conversations. Private meetings. We had one meeting. He asked if I wanted to proceed. I said I wanted to see if he meant what he claimed. That's all. You must have discussed the contracts. He showed me documents. I read them. I formed my own opinions. There was no manipulation. Your opinions conveniently aligned with his agenda. My opinions aligned with not wanting to sign away my autonomy. Caelum interrupted. Sharp. Clear. There's nothing convenient about that. It's basic self-preservation. The room went silent. Chen changed approach. You understand your testimony here damages Syndicate reputation, harms the family that employed you, provided housing, resources. I understand I'm telling the truth. Truth according to your limited perspective. Truth according to contract language that anyone can read. You don't need my perspective. The restrictions are written clearly. Article after article of control mechanisms disguised as protection. Ravien watched Caelum testify, watched him refuse to minimize, refused to perform the compliance they expected, speaking his actual thoughts without pre-approval for the first time in a public forum. This was dangerous. Every word was ammunition they could use against him later. But Caelum didn't stop. I've worked here for 4 years, Caelum continued. I've watched Omegas come and go, seen how they change after bonding, how they start self-censoring, checking their words, their clothes, their expressions, all to stay within contract compliance. He looked directly at Chen. You want to know if I influenced Ravien? I didn't, but I confirmed his worst suspicions were accurate, because I lived what he was just starting to see. Garrett stood abruptly. This testimony is clearly biased. It's factual, Caelum said calmly. You can disagree with my conclusions, but you can't dispute the contract clauses I'm referencing. They're your documents, your language, your system. Tasha made extensive notes. Any further questions for this witness? She asked. Garrett shook his head, looked furious. Witness dismissed. Caelum stood, walked back to his seat, didn't look at Ravien, didn't acknowledge the counsel, just moved through space like he was already gone. We'll call Ravien Castellanos next, Tasha announced. Ravien took the witness chair. Everything that came before led to this moment. Mr. Castellanos, please explain why you filed the initial complaint. Ravien took a breath. I read my mother's mate contract, found journal entries describing her experience living under it, realized the system we'd normalized was actually systematic oppression. That's a strong characterization. It's an accurate one. The contracts don't just set expectations. They eliminate alternatives, remove voice, control behavior through legal mechanisms that make resistance technically breach of contract. He pulled out his tablet, displayed a contract clause on the overhead screen. Article 17. Omega Mate commits to maintaining family presentation standards including approved wardrobe, speech patterns, and emotional displays. That's not partnership. That's performance enforcement. Showed another clause. Article 12. Omega Mate agrees to defer all public statements to Alpha Partner for approval prior to delivery. That's not protection. That's censorship. He continued through 10 more examples, each one more restrictive than the last. The gallery watched in silence. Several people were crying. My mother lived under this contract for 26 years. I watched her fade, watched her stop trying to express actual opinions, watched her become whatever version of herself we found acceptable. His voice cracked slightly. I filed the complaint because I finally understood what I'd been seeing, and I couldn't let it continue. Tasha looked at him carefully. You understand this complaint has significant consequences? For your family? For you personally? Yes. And you still maintain all allegations are accurate? Completely. I have documentation, journals, statistical analysis of Omega outcomes over 5 decades. All of it points to the same conclusion. The system is broken, has been broken, will continue being broken until we force change. His father stood. You're destroying our family's reputation. No, Ravien interrupted. I'm revealing what the family actually does. There's a difference. Your mother would never want this. My mother couldn't want anything. The contract prevented her from having independent desires. That's exactly the problem. The argument escalated. Voices raised. Legal teams objecting. Gallery members shouting support or opposition. Tasha let it build. Watching. Assessing. Finally raised her hand. We'll adjourn for today. Resume tomorrow for closing statements and formal findings. The room erupted, reporters rushing for exits. Gallery members clustering in groups. Council members huddling with lawyers. Ravien stayed seated. Caelum appeared beside him. "You okay?" Caelum asked quietly. "I don't know. You?" "Same." They sat together while the room emptied. Two people who'd just publicly destroyed their lives for a principle that might not even matter. "Tomorrow they vote," Caelum said. "Yeah. What do you think happens?" "Honestly? No idea." Caelum almost smiled. "Reassuring. I try." They left through separate exits, maintaining the appearance of restricted contact even though everyone knew the restriction was performative. Ravien's phone exploded with notifications. News coverage, social media trending, opinion pieces, most of it polarized, half calling him a hero, half calling him a traitor. He turned it off. Didn't matter what they called him. Only mattered what the oversight board decided. That night he couldn't sleep. Kept replaying testimony. Wondering if he'd said enough. Said too much. Made it better or worse. His mother's journals sat on his desk. He opened to a random page. Entry dated 6 months before she died. "I don't remember who I was before this. Before the contract. Before the performance. Sometimes I catch myself in mirrors and don't recognize my own face. This person looking back isn't me. It's whoever they needed me to become." Ravien closed the journal. Couldn't read more, but he knew what tomorrow had to be. Not for him, not even for Caelum. For everyone who'd ever signed a contract that erased them. Everyone who'd ever performed compliance because resistance meant losing everything. Tomorrow the oversight board would decide if any of this mattered. If systematic oppression could be challenged. If change was possible. Or if the system was too big to fight. Ravien lay awake until sunrise, thinking about his mother, about Caelum, about every person who'd ever been ranked like stocks and evaluated like portfolios. Tomorrow would bring answers, or it wouldn't. Either way, he'd done everything he could. The council chamber felt different today, heavier, like the walls knew something was about to crack. Tasha and her 2 oversight board colleagues sat center stage now. The council members relegated to side tables. Visual shift in power dynamics that nobody missed. Gallery was even more packed. Standing room only. Press credentials couldn't accommodate everyone who wanted in. They'd set up overflow viewing in 2 adjacent conference rooms. This had become bigger than one family's internal dispute. Caelum sat in the same back row. Ravien across the room at a witness table. They'd been instructed not to communicate directly. Fine. They didn't need words at this point. "We'll begin with final statements," Tasha announced. "Council may speak first." Ravien's father stood, looking older than yesterday. Tired around the edges. The Castellanos family acknowledges that historical contract language contained provisions that, viewed through a contemporary lens, appear restrictive. "We have already begun comprehensive review of all made agreements to ensure they reflect current values of partnership and mutual respect." Translation: "We're scrambling to fix this before it destroys us. However," he continued, "we maintain that these contracts were products of their time. Social norms have evolved. Our practices have evolved with them. The characterization of our family as systematically oppressive is both inaccurate and defamatory." He paused, made eye contact with several gallery members. "We have provided safety, stability, and opportunity to countless Omegas over 5 decades. To reduce that legacy to a series of contract clauses taken out of context is unfair and deliberately misleading." He sat down. Several council members nodded agreement. Tasha made notes. "Complainant may respond." Ravien stood. No prepared statement, just truth. "My father says the contracts were products of their time. That social norms have evolved." He's right. They have. But the contracts didn't evolve until I forced the issue. Until I filed a complaint that made them visible to external oversight. He pulled out his tablet. Displayed a timeline. "Here are the contract revision dates for the last 20 years. 0 changes from 2005 to 2023. 0. Social norms evolved. The contracts stayed identical. Control mechanisms preserved year after year after year. The display showed it clearly. Flat line of no change until suddenly, last month, frantic revision activity. They claim they were already reviewing these agreements. Show me the documentation, the committee meetings that predate my complaint, the draft revisions, the internal discussions about making contracts more equitable. He waited. No response. You can't, because those discussions didn't happen. Change only started when external pressure forced it. When the system was challenged publicly and you couldn't hide behind tradition anymore. Ravien looked at the oversight board representatives. This isn't about my family specifically. It's about a structure that exists across multiple syndicate families. I filed one complaint. 3 other families filed similar ones within 48 hours. Same contract clauses. Same patterns of control. Same systematic reduction of omega autonomy. He displayed another chart. Statistical analysis of omega outcomes across 4 families. Look at the data. Omegas in mate contracts have significantly lower rates of independent employment, public speaking, social connections outside approved circles, access to personal finances. Every metric indicates systematic limitation of autonomy. Several gallery members nodded, taking photos of the displayed data. My father talks about safety and stability. But safety for whom? Stability of what? These contracts created safety for the families. Stability of power structures. But for the Omegas who signed them, they created dependence. Silence. Enforced compliance disguised as partnership. He pulled up his mother's journal entry. The one about not recognizing herself. This is my mother's writing. 6 months before she died. Describing how the contract erased her identity. How performance replaced personality. How she became whatever version of herself we found acceptable. His voice stayed steady but something raw underneath. You want to defend this system? Fine. But do it honestly. Don't call it protection when it's control. Don't call it partnership when it's possession. Don't call it consensual when alternatives don't exist. He sat down. Room stayed silent for several seconds. Tasha conferred with her colleagues. Low voices. Serious expressions. Finally looked up. The Oversight Board has reviewed all submitted evidence. Historical contracts from 5 syndicate families. Statistical outcome data spanning 50 years. Personal testimony from 17 current and former Omega mates. Economic analysis of alternative options available to Omega individuals at time of contract signing. She paused. Let the weight settle. Our findings are as follows. The room held its breath. First, contract language across all reviewed families contains provisions that materially limit Omega autonomy in ways that constitute systematic restriction of rights. These limitations include but are not limited to speech, employment, social connection, financial access, and personal expression. Ravien's father's jaw tightened. Second, alternative options available to Omegas at time of contract signing were functionally limited due to economic structure, social pressure, and family expectations. While contracts were signed with formal consent, the presence of meaningful choice is questionable given the circumstances. Chen's expression went carefully neutral. Third, promise protections within contracts, including counseling access, financial security, and support resources, were subject to alpha partner approval in ways that negated their protective function. Resources that require permission from the person they're meant to protect against are not genuine safeguards. Morrison looked at his legal team. They avoided eye contact. Fourth, recent contract revisions by the Castellanos family and others appear to be direct responses to external pressure rather than independent recognition of problems. Documentation shows no substantive revision activity prior to complaint filing. Ravien's father stood. We object. Noted, Tasha said. Fifth and finally, the complainant's characterization of these practices as systematic oppression is supported by the evidence. While individual families may have acted within legal boundaries of their time period, the The collective pattern indicates institutional prioritization of control over partnership. The room erupted. Council members objecting. Gallery members celebrating. Reporters rushing to file updates. Tasha raised her voice. The Oversight Board issues the following requirements. Everyone quieted. All syndicate families must submit revised mate contracts within 90 days. Contracts must eliminate clauses that restrict speech, require approval for resource access, limit independent employment, control personal expression, or mandate behavioral compliance beyond reasonable partnership expectations. She looked directly at Ravien's father. Families that fail to comply will lose syndicate membership and associated privileges. This is non-negotiable. His father's face had gone stone. Furthermore, all current mate contracts must be reviewed with Omega partners. Partners must be offered opportunity to renegotiate terms or dissolve bonds without penalty. This review must be conducted by neutral third parties, not family representatives. Chun raised her hand. That could destabilize decades of established relationships. Then those relationships were based on coercion rather than genuine partnership, Tasha said bluntly. We're correcting that. She continued. The Oversight Board also recognizes Ravien Castellanos' complaint as justified and supported by evidence. Any retaliatory actions taken against him or associated witnesses, she looked pointedly at Caelum, will result in immediate sanctions including potential criminal charges. Garrett looked sick. Caelum Reeves is to be restored to full employment status with back pay for any demoted positions. Restriction orders are dissolved effective immediately. Caelum's eyes widened slightly. First real emotion Ravien had seen from him all day. This concludes the formal investigation. Full report will be published within 30 days. All documentation will be made publicly available per transparency requirements. Tasha stood. We're adjourned. The room exploded. Everyone talking at once. Council members huddling. Gallery members cheering or arguing. Press rushing for exits. Ravien sat frozen. They'd won. Actually won. Systematic reform. Required compliance. Public accountability. Caelum appeared beside him. We did it. You did it, Ravien corrected. Your testimony was terrifying. Perfect. They stood together while chaos swirled around them. Two people who just forced institutional change through sheer stubborn refusal to accept things as they were. Marcus pushed through the crowd. The council is requesting emergency session. They want to negotiate implementation terms. There's nothing to negotiate, Ravien said. The board issued requirements. Either comply or lose membership. They're going to try to minimize impact. Let them try. The documentation is public now. Everyone can see what these contracts actually said. They can't hide behind tradition anymore. Marcus smiled. Actually smiled. You know what this means? What? You just became the most hated and most celebrated person in Syndicate history simultaneously. Great. Always wanted to be polarizing. Caelum laughed. Short. Surprised. You succeeded. They left together through the main exit. No more separate paths. No more restricted contact. Walking out into sunlight that felt different somehow. Ravien's phone had approximately 700 notifications. News coverage. Interview requests. Death threats mixed with thank you messages. Complete chaos. He turned it off. What now? Caelum asked. Honestly, I have no idea. You just forced systemic reform across multiple syndicate families, and you have no plan for what comes next? Apparently not. Caelum shook his head. That's either brave or stupid. Probably both. They walked across the syndicate grounds one last time. Ravien's eviction notice was still active. He had 6 days to clear out completely. Didn't matter. He wouldn't have stayed anyway. Where will you go? Caelum asked. Haven't decided. You? They're restoring my employment. But I don't think I can stay here. Not after everything. Makes sense. They reached the main gate. Paused. For a man who rejected 20 omegas, Caelum said quietly, you ended up choosing the only thing that couldn't be ranked. Ravien looked at him. What's that? Principle, integrity, basic human decency. None of it fits on their spreadsheets. Something shifted between them. Recognition of what they'd actually accomplished. Not romance, not traditional partnership, but something real. I'm glad you were watching the room that night, Ravien said. I'm glad you noticed. They stood there while Syndicate members moved around them, while the world processed what had just happened, while systemic change started its slow, painful progress. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, contract revisions to monitor, families trying to circumvent requirements, Omegas navigating renegotiations with partners who'd controlled them for years. But today they'd won. Forced visibility, required accountability, made silence impossible. 3 months later, Ravien sat in a coffee shop that didn't care about Syndicate politics. Small place, uncomfortable chairs, coffee that tasted like coffee instead of status symbol. His laptop showed the oversight board's final report. 200 pages of documentation, statistical analysis, contract comparisons, testimony transcripts. Everything that proved systematic oppression wasn't conspiracy theory, it was documented fact. The report had gone viral. Not just in Syndicate circles. Mainstream media picked it up. Think pieces. Academic analysis. Suddenly everyone had opinions about mate contracts and autonomy and consent under coercion. Ravien's phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Council voted to accept all oversight requirements. No contest. Clean implementation. Ravien responded, about time. Marcus, your father resigned. Effective immediately. That stopped him. He read it twice. Ravien. Seriously? Marcus said he couldn't lead during transition period. Garrett's interim chair until elections. Ravien set down his phone. His father had run that family for 30 years. Built empires. Crushed opposition. Never backed down from anything. Until his own son made backing down the only option. Another text. This one from unknown number. Thought you'd want to know. 23 Omegas requested contract renegotiation. 12 dissolved bonds entirely. New precedent established. Ravien had no idea who sent it. Didn't matter. The message was clear. Change was happening. Real change. Messy and complicated and painful for everyone involved. But happening. The coffee shop door opened. Caelum entered. Spotted Ravien. Headed over. You're late, Ravien said. I'm exactly on time. You're early. Perspective. Caelum sat down. Ordered something complicated that the barista wrote on the cup with multiple question marks. Looked more relaxed than Ravien had ever seen him. How's the new job? Ravien asked. Good. Weird. They actually ask my opinion in meetings. Like my thoughts matter. Revolutionary concept. Right? Caelum had left Syndicate employment a month ago. Got hired by an advocacy organization that worked on Omega rights. Turned out living through systematic oppression made him exceptionally qualified to dismantle it. How's the non-profit going? Caelum asked. Ravien gestured at his laptop. Paperwork is endless, but we're officially registered. Omega Advocacy Initiative. Has a nice ring to it. Very official. We try. The non-profit had been Marcus's idea. Use Ravien's newfound notoriety for something productive. Create resources for Omegas navigating contract renegotiations. Legal support. Counseling. Economic assistance for those leaving bonds. Turned out getting removed from Syndicate succession freed up a lot of time for actual meaningful work. I got an interesting call yesterday, Caelum said. Yeah. Publisher. Wants to interview me for a book about the whole thing. Reform movement. Personal narratives. How systematic change actually happens. Ravien looked up. Are you doing it? Maybe. If you do it with me. Me? You started this. People should hear why. Directly from you, not filtered through news coverage. Ravien considered that. I'm not good at interviews. You gave testimony in front of 60 people and 3 oversight board representatives. You'll be fine. That was different. That was necessary. So is this. These contracts still exist in families outside syndicate jurisdiction. Other organizations with similar power structures. Your story could push change beyond what we've already accomplished. He was right. Ravien hated that he was right. I'll think about it, Ravien said. Liar. You've already decided yes. Probably. They sat drinking coffee while the world moved around them. Normal people doing normal things. Not thinking about mate contracts or systematic oppression or how institutional power structures crush individual autonomy. Must be nice. Ravien's phone buzzed again. Email notification. Subject line. Your mother's journals. Publication request. He opened it. Academic press wanted to publish his mother's writings. With annotation and historical context. Create permanent record of what these contracts actually did to real people. They want to publish her journals, Ravien said quietly. Caelum looked up. What do you think? I think she couldn't speak when she was alive. Maybe she should get to speak now. That's not what I asked. Ravien closed his laptop. I think it terrifies me, making her private pain public. Using her suffering for advocacy. It feels exploitative. Even if it helps other people? Even then. Maybe especially then. Caelum reached across the table. Took his hand. Simple gesture that still surprised them both sometimes. They'd started actually dating 2 months ago. Carefully. Weirdly. Neither of them knew how to do relationship without contract obligations and power imbalances. Turned out removing systematic oppression made everything complicated in different ways. But good complicated. The kind where they actually chose each other instead of being chosen for each other. She'd be proud of you, Caelum said. What you've done. What you're still doing. You don't know that. I know she wrote those questions in the margins. Those doubts. Those observations. She documented everything because part of her knew it mattered. That someday someone might look at those contracts and recognize the damage. You became that someone. Ravien's throat tightened. I should have seen it sooner. You saw it when you were ready. Can't change the timing. I could have saved her. No, you couldn't. She was already gone. But you can save everyone who comes after. That's what this is. They sat holding hands across a coffee shop table while normal life continued around them. Two people who'd chosen systematic change over comfortable silence. Who'd burned their lives down for principle and were still figuring out what to build from the ashes. I'm going to say yes to the journal publication, Ravien decided. With conditions. Academic context only. No sensationalism. Proceeds go to Omega support organizations. She'd like that. Maybe. His phone rang. A known number. He almost didn't answer. Hello, Mr. Castellanos? This is Tasha from the Oversight Board. Ravien sat up straighter. Yes. We've received formal complaints from 3 more syndicate families. Different regions. Same contract patterns. They're requesting you consult on investigations. Me? You have expertise no one else has. You've lived inside the system. Understand how it operates. We're offering you a position. Oversight Board Special Investigator for Mate Contract Compliance. Ravien looked at Caelum. Mouthed job offer. Caelum raised his eyebrows. What would that involve? Ravien asked. Travel to different syndicate families. Review contracts. Interview Omegas. Document patterns. Build cases for reform. Basically what you did to your own family, but officially sanctioned and paid. Paid how much? She named a figure. Ravien nearly dropped his phone. That's market rate for specialized consulting. Plus expenses. Plus legal protection. You'd be working directly under board authority. Families couldn't retaliate without facing federal charges. I need to think. Take 24 hours. But we need an answer fast. These complaints are time-sensitive. She hung up. Ravien set down his phone. Looked at Caelum. They want me to do this professionally. Investigate mate contracts across multiple families. Caelum smiled. Of course they do. You're exceptionally qualified. I destroyed my own family. That's not a qualification. You forced institutional change. That's exactly a qualification. Ravien leaned back. This wasn't supposed to be a career. It was supposed to be one complaint, one family, one system fixed. And now it's bigger, messier, more complicated. Caelum squeezed his hand. So what? You started something that matters. Might as well see it through. What about the non-profit? Marcus can run it. That's literally what you hired him for. What about us? We'll figure it out, like we've been figuring everything else out. Ravien looked at him, this person who'd been invisible by design, who'd learned to survive through practice compliance, who'd somehow found voice when it mattered most. You're really okay with me traveling? Being gone weeks at a time? I'm really okay with you doing work that matters. We'll handle the distance. Ravien's phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Heard about the oversight board offer. Take it. I've got the non-profit covered. He showed Caelum. See? Universe is conspiring. Universe is being pushy. Same thing. They finished their coffee. Walked out into afternoon sunlight that felt different than it had 3 months ago. Like the air itself had changed composition. Ravien pulled out his phone. Called Tasha back. I'll take the position. Excellent. Welcome aboard. First assignment briefing tomorrow at 9. She hung up before he could second-guess. Well, Caelum said, you're officially a professional system destroyer now. Apparently. How does it feel? Ravien considered that. 3 months ago he had everything. Title, inheritance, position, certainty about his future. Now he had none of those things. Had a non-profit with questionable funding. A relationship with no contract defining it. A job investigating the same structures that raised him. Had Caelum's hand in his. Had purpose that mattered. Had the knowledge that his mother's suffering hadn't been for nothing. It feels right, Ravien said finally. Terrifying. Complicated. Uncertain. But right. Good enough. They walked through the city. 2 people who'd rejected traditional power for something more honest. Who'd chosen clarity over comfort. Who'd looked at systematic oppression and decided it was unacceptable. Ravien's phone buzzed one more time. News alert. Syndicate mate contract reform spreads 2 international families. Castellanos' complaint triggers global review. He showed Caelum. You started a movement, Caelum said quietly. We started a movement. Semantics. Important ones. They turned down a street neither had planned to take. No destination in mind. Just walking. Existing without predetermined outcomes or contract obligations. Ravien thought about the 20 Omegas he'd rejected that night. Wondered where they were now. If any of them had renegotiated their own contracts. If seeing his complaint gave them permission to question their own situations. Thought about his mother. About journal entries documenting slow erasure. About questions written in margins that no one was supposed to see. Someone had seen them now. Everyone had seen them. Her silence had become the loudest voice in the entire movement. For a man who rejected 20 Omegas, Caelum said, echoing words from months ago, you ended up choosing the only thing that couldn't be ranked. What's that? Ravien asked even though he knew. Everything that actually matters. Integrity. Truth. The willingness to burn down comfort for something real. Ravien stopped walking. Looked at Caelum. This person who'd been labeled low impact. Dismissed as unsuitable. Categorized as having no alliance value. This person who'd helped dismantle systematic oppression through simple, devastating honesty. I didn't choose those things alone, Ravien said. No, you didn't. They stood on a random street corner while the city moved around them. 2 people who'd rejected what they were supposed to want. Who'd chosen uncertainty over predetermined outcomes. Who'd looked at powerful systems and decided they were unacceptable. And maybe that's what power was supposed to mean all along. Not control. Not dominance. Not the ability to rank people like assets. But the courage to recognize what's broken and the willingness to fix it. Even when fixing it costs everything. Even when the outcome is uncertain. Even when you're terrified and have no idea what comes next. They'd lost titles, inheritance, certainty, traditional measures of success. Gained something harder to quantify, purpose, partnership, the knowledge that they'd looked at injustice and refused to look away. 3 months ago, Ravien stood in a crystal chandelier dining hall evaluating 20 omegas like portfolios. Now he stood on a street corner holding hands with someone the system said didn't matter. About to spend his career dismantling the structures that created that system. Full circle. Completely transformed. His phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus. Forgot to mention. Your father wants to meet. Says he needs to talk. No pressure but thought you should know. Ravien showed Caelum. You going to see him? Caelum asked. Eventually. Not yet. When? When I'm ready to hear whatever he needs to say without needing his approval for my response. Caelum smiled. That's specific. I'm learning. They started walking again. No destination. Just movement forward through a world that looked the same but functioned differently now. Somewhere in that crystal chandelier dining hall, someone else was probably being evaluated, ranked, assessed for alliance benefit. But now they had options, resources, legal protections, the knowledge that contracts could be challenged and systems could be changed. All because Ravien looked at 20 perfect candidates and saw performance instead of people. All because Caelum existed honestly when everyone else was performing. All because sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to participate in your own oppression. They walked until sunset, until the city lights started coming on, until it was time to go home to apartments they'd chosen instead of housing assigned by family obligation. Same time next week? Caelum asked at the intersection where they split toward different neighborhoods. Same time next week, Ravien confirmed. They separated. Two independent people choosing connection instead of having it predetermined by contract. Ravien walked home thinking about his mother's journals, about oversight board investigations, about Omega's renegotiating contracts across multiple families, about how systematic change happened in moments too small to notice until suddenly the whole structure shifted. He'd rejected 20 Omegas and ended up changing the entire system that created those rejections. Not because he was particularly brave. Not because he was exceptionally moral. Not because he had some grand plan. Because he looked at what was normal and recognized it was unacceptable. Because he had documentation that proved it. Because he refused to stay silent even when silence would have been easier. And maybe, possibly, hopefully, that was enough to matter. His phone buzzed one final time. Text from Caelum. Thank you. For all of it. Ravien responded. Thank you for making me look past the performance. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Final message. See you next week, System Destroyer. Ravien smiled. Put his phone away. Walked into his apartment that was too small and too far from Syndicate prestige and absolutely perfect. Tomorrow he'd start his new position. Begin investigating other families. Start the long, complicated process of forcing change across institutions designed to resist it. Tonight he could just exist. No performance. No contract obligations. No predetermined outcomes. Just himself. Whoever that was without syndicate expectations defining it. For the first time in his life that felt like enough.